Hey, do you have games on your phone? If I had penny for every time little kids around me ask me this question, I would be rich. I usually tell them that my phone only has work stuff, no games. But somehow they manage to swoop in, swipe the phone without my notice, and the next thing I know, they are beating my high score. What is it that makes video games so appealing? Normally, you would never see me shaking a leg in public, but I just learned a new move on Fortnite, and I can't wait to show it off to my team. And that really is the essence of the video game experience. Age no bar, everyone is entertained by being able to do silly things once in a while. Players can do things like build a fort with people from around the world, kill zombies with Star Wand while wearing disco pants. You get the idea? The more ridiculous features a video game has to offer, the more fun it is. But video games didn't always have so many features. In fact, video games have come a long way since 1958, when physicist William Eugene created a simple game of tennis. Atari's 1970s Pong bears a lot of similarities to it. I can't believe playing Pong was so much fun, when all we have to do was move a line from one corner of the screen to the next in order to make sure the ball didn't drop. Plus, it made a weird buzzer sound. That's it. That was the game. The first generation consoles that were used to play these games merely decades ago had a graphical capabilities of simple geometry such as dots, lines or blocks on a single screen and could not display more than two colors. The audio capabilities were so low that some had no audio at all. It is so nostalgic, especially when the graphics we see today are so real that it sometimes gets difficulty to identify if it is an animated character or a real person. I am sure you have experienced this dilemma. But you know the journey from age-old pixelated graphics to this real-time animation was not easy. It involved a lot of iterations, not just in terms of games we play but also the machine itself, aka the video game console. The history of video game consoles is in no way less interesting than the games they help us play. So let's dive right in. We'll start in the year 1967 when Ralph H. Baer, the father of video games, invented the first video game console. It debuted in the form of a rectangular, big, bulky wooden brown box equipped with 6 simple games, 2 attached controllers, and could be hooked up to TV sets. It was creatively named Brown Box. Well, he certainly was the father of video games, not creative names. The Brown Box was then licensed by Magnavox to be the first official video game console called the Magnavox Odyssey. In 1977, the console game industry literally jumped to the next level when Atari announced a console that accepted 9 simple cartridges, 128 bytes of RAM and 4 kilobytes of ROM. It could be hooked to television sets. The sensational Atari 2600, it was a huge leap as Atari's very own Pong and other games that had dominated the scene so far only had self-contained games. They couldn't use different cartridges, so there wasn't much variety. Now players could use joysticks and paddle controllers to play cult classics like Pac-Man that was associated with the golden age of the arcade. Atari 2600 is often credited for popularizing the incorporation of microprocessors within consoles. Microprocessors are like mini computers that have arithmetic, logical and control circuitry, which in turn performs the CPU's functions kind of like a brain or central nervous system of the body. The video game industry seemed to be powering up as the demand for new video games skyrocketed. The price of home consoles were more affordable, so more people were able to buy them. Although this may seem like blossoming sign of bustling industry, too much of anything is a problem, and that's exactly what happened. The immense popularity and success of video game industry meant that everyone wanted a piece of it. Even serial giants like Walker Oates and General Mills wanted to cash in on the crazy demand, and that started producing video games. This led to the problem of oversaturation, which simply means that there was just too many games available in the market. Heavy competition, third-party involvement and time constraints caused even frontrunners like Atari to churn out infamously bad games such as E.T., which is often listed amongst the worst video games of all time, and it's parodied to this day. It left the players confused and disoriented. I don't know about extraterrestrial, but humans definitely didn't want to take that game home. A string of high-profile flops pushed console companies to the brink of bankruptcy and created a heavy backlash against console games. Even if one had the best console in the neighborhood, the other kids would be armed with completely different consoles, each equipped with their own arsenal of games, none that quite lived up to anybody's expectations. This led to the mass confusion and disconnect. The video game industry was labeled a fad, and the crash that would lead to the great North American video game crash were on full display. What made matters worse was the video game console industry was the arrival of the personal home computer. Computers were a novelty with better embedded systems that were armed with a range of features like playing games, maintaining accounts, and chatting with others. Computers were the perfect example of work hard, and play hard all rolled into one. Moreover, the price war between computer companies led to computers being sold at nearly the price of console. As a result, the video game industry was collateral damage. Following the crash, staggeringly low consumer confidence loomed over the video game industry. The market was getting smaller, just like the revenue of giants like Atari. A company with $3 billion reserve fell to one with 10 million. At this time, an unlikely hero emerged from the ashes and revived the development of hardware consoles, Nintendo, a name that still rings true for quality and innovation. Nintendo emerged like a phoenix from the ashes of the gaming console industry. Nintendo developed its hardware console and focused on creating a few high-quality games. They restricted access to third-party developers who could maliciously tamper with their product. They achieved this by introducing concepts such as checking integrated circuits or lockout chips. These served as digital locks preventing unlicensed and pirated game cartridges from running on the console. The official Nintendo seals served as an assurance of quality as long as they remained unbroken. Video games to this day are sold with these seals. The act of revoking the freedom of third-party developers and company seals increased consumer confidence, and boy, did the sales see their magic. By 1990, it was reported that out of every dollar spent on a toy, 16 cents went to Nintendo. At one point, they held nearly 90% of the market. Soon, Nintendo saw a challenger rise in Sony's PlayStation, which was released in 1994. It was available in 70 million homes in merely 5 years. Sony had a different strategy. They encouraged outside developers with their open source software to contribute, and this led to nearly 3,000 games being made available on the platform. This era also saw the rise of the new rivals within the industry, like Sega, whose clashes with the Nintendo were dubbed the first Sonic vs Mario Wars. The gaming industry was officially back, stronger than ever. This time, they were here to stay. The video game consoles that were center of these legendary wars are quite an interesting piece of technology themselves. They have embedded systems that are based on microprocessors, that is, hardware with software in them. Embedded systems are different components that serve a specific function, work independently, but as a part of a larger system, just like how the Infinity Stones, each with their own abilities, make the Infinity Gauntlet extremely powerful. Video game consoles consist of a few intricate embedded components that work together seamlessly to bring some of the best technologies the world has to offer to your fingertips. Video game consoles consist of 8 basic components or embedded systems: the user control interface, CPU, GPU, RAM, operating system, storage medium for games, video output, audio output. As time flew, video games flew higher. The days kids were running like Super Marios behind cartridges and classic NES consoles with simple joysticks and duck and guns have been replaced. Those 8-bit wonderlands played on an old TV with scan lines and bongo sound effects like Super Mario Bros. Are now a part of the gamer life archives. After game consoles reached the PlayStation era, the gaming experience just got better and better. Joysticks changed to sophisticated controllers with a variety of buttons. The controllers were embedded with vibrators that heightened a gamer's experience while playing. Cartridges changed to DVDs and Blu-rays. From the offline arcade games, people started playing online games using their broadband connections. Some consoles even had cameras to track the user's motion and gestures and provided a new levels of gaming. Now all of this is important, but it is from a gamer's viewpoint. As engineers, our concerns also lie with what's inside these consoles. A classic Nintendo console just had an 8-bit processor with a clock speed of 1.79 MHz. It also had very small system of RAM and video RAM of 2 KB and a storage capacity of 16 KB. Obviously, that was more than enough to play 8-bit games like Donkey Kong and Balloon Fight. On the other hand, the Sony PlayStation 2 is a lot more complicated, which is why we have a block diagram to help us understand it. This is the block diagram of the Emotion Engine of Sony PlayStation 2. The Emotion Engine accepts inputs from the input-output processor, or more commonly known as IOP. It creates the display list of a video game to enable 3D video transformations in real time. There are interfaces for video, sound, and a DVD player. There are 2 standard computer input-output buses, USB and IEEE 1394, a PCMCIA slot as found in the portable PCs, and a modem. Although it appears that the input-output processor simply handles the input-output devices and the game console, it's not the only purpose. It includes a 34 MHz MIPS processor that also acts as an emulation computer to run earlier PlayStation games. Moreover, It also connects to a standard PC audio card to provide the sound for the games. The graphics synthesizer takes rendering commands from the Emotion Engine in what are commonly called display lists. These are lists of 32-bit commands that tell the renderer what shape to use and where to place them. It also tells what colors and textures to fill. By using embedded DRAM on the graphics synthesizer, the chip contains a full video buffer and has a 2048-bit wide interface so that the pixel filling is not a bottleneck. This embedded DRAM greatly reduces the bandwidth demands on the DRAM. These DRAM are placed to execute a common technique found in embedded applications, that is, separate memories dedicated to individual functions. This helps to achieve greater memory bandwidth for the entire system. All these components come together to create a machine with an immense potential, but most importantly, a fun experience. Talking about fun experiences, when you play Assassin's Creed or Spider-Man, don't you wish you could feel the wind running through your hair as you swing from buildings or feel the sun on your back and the impact on your feet? Well, you wouldn't be the only one. All these wishes could soon be a reality. Video games have advanced to an incredible place called virtual reality. For video game creators, virtual reality consists of a whole new world of storytelling, a fully immersive experience for gamers like never before. So far, gaming consoles have engaged two of our five senses, sight and hearing. The next sense that gaming companies, especially ones that deal with VR, plan to explore is the sense of touch. One thing that has held them back is clunky, uncomfortable VR suits, but that looks like it will soon join the past as Northwestern University has developed something called ThinSkin. These suits are battery free and allow for the sense of virtual touch. They have thermal heating as a way to sense weather and temperature in the game. Truly next level. It was revealed that close to 89% of users who used virtual reality were satisfied with the experience, and the numbers are only set to grow looking at the exposure and novelty it proposes. It is estimated that the video game industry will reach revenues of a whopping $100.56 billion by the year 2024. The statistics for online gamers also saw a spike as more and more gamers opt online to take a ride into the future on their respective consoles.